today we're going to dive deep into the topic of play, and maybe some of what I share might challenge the work you do with young children and their families. I hope so, because I have some bad news. According to the CDC, you know what? I have to just pause for a second. When I used to do this presentation, and I got to this slide and I'd say, according to the CDC, and then I had to explain who's the CDC. Do I need to tell you who the CDC is anymore? No, thank you, pandemic. Okay, according to the CDC, diagnoses of ADHD, obesity, depression, and anxiety are all on the rise, and the suicide rate among children ages 10 to 14 has nearly tripled from 2007 to 2017. According to a researcher named Dr. Peter Gray, he says the most straightforward reason or explanation for the rise in depression and anxiety in children and adolescents is that we as a society have increasingly forced them into settings that make them unhappy and anxious, and we deprive them of the activities that make them happy. There was a researcher named George Land back in the early 70s, and he was hired by NASA to create a tool to assess creativity. And the idea was to put the right people in the right jobs. So he created this tool with a team of people, of course, and it was a good tool, and they thought this would be interesting to give to young children. So they gave the test to young children, I think ages 4 and 5, a big sampling, big for a study, 1,600 people in the study, and they tested them. Ages 4 and 5-year-olds, 98% of those kids tested at genius levels for creativity. Amazing. But we know that. Like, it's not so shocking to us, right? But to them it was very shocking. So they turned this into a longitudinal study. 5 years later, those same children, 9 and 10-year-olds, tested at 30% of them tested at genius level for creativity. So something happened between those 5 years. They did it again, another 5 years later, 14, 15-year-olds. Same kids, same test, only 12% tested at genius level for creativity. And we know that the adult sampling size is 2%. So the conclusion is that non-creative behaviors are learned, not the other way around, right? But what about now? So that was in the early 70s. Well, a research scholar named Kung-Hee Kim discovered that children in kindergarten through 12th grade ages performance on now what is called the most reliable measure of creativity, the Torrance test for creativity, their scores on this test have declined more than a full standard deviation in a generation. And that means 85% of today's children are less creative than their 1980s counterparts. 85%. And the most striking decline, she said, happened in the youngest children. She links it to insufficient time for play and structured time and something else. Do you guys know what else happened in screens and technology, but something else happened in that time frame? Something called No Child Left Behind. Something called, we're going to tie funding to outcomes. And that, we know what happened, right? With all these negative outcomes, there's a correlation here that corresponds to declining time for play. So what the heck is happening? Well, we touched on it a little bit. I think, and some experts think, it's this high-stakes standardized testing. Driving teachers, that's one of the reasons, to teach, to meet a standard. Do we do this in early care and education? But do we? Maybe not high stakes, but is funding tied to outcomes? Mm-hmm. And do we have to do certain kinds of assessments that make us do things with children that maybe they're not meant to be doing? Mm-hmm. You don't have to do that, but I see it. You guys, I go out and I see programs. I'm an educator myself. I run a small preschool that I own in Palo Alto, and I'm in the classroom 4 out of 5 days a week. So I'm in it, but I also go to other programs and I see really well-meaning teachers that need to check off their check marks on their DRDP or whatever measure they're using, and sitting kids down and making them do things so that they can say, yep, they got this. Those assessment tools were never meant to be used that way. They were not meant to be used that way. They were meant to be an observation and assessment tool where we observe kids in their natural environment, and we see them, instead of sitting them down and making them do a patterning worksheet or a block thing that, we see them in the block area naturally doing patterns, or outside with rocks and leaves. You can see it. You can see them do these things. And then we're supposed to check these things off, right? Well, who has time? I'm just going to say that. But okay, so that's one thing, this high-stakes standardized testing. But in our field, I think sometimes it's happening. Maybe not everywhere, but I think it sometimes. Okay. I think another threat to play is just well-meaning teachers. Just well-meaning teachers. Okay, this could have been me in my early years as a teacher. My classroom had all this, oh my gosh, you guys, I'm embarrassed. Okay, I'll tell you. I was allowed to decorate, literally pick all the colors for my classroom, including the floor tiles, the shelving, the curtains, blue, red, yellow, primary colors everywhere. It was like something spit up in the room and just made it just like this crazy color. And I did the calendar time and the weather time. Did I tell you I'm in Northern California? We have two weathers. So it's like sunny, rainy, sometimes, not anymore. Now it's just drizzle every now and then, but sometimes smoke now. But there was really no good reason to be doing weather time and calendar time with these children. And I think we deprive them of play when we have our grown-up intentions behind what we do with them, right? So as a young teacher, I did do this stuff. Admit it. I'm sorry for those kids. But early in my career, thank God, I met and followed the work of the amazing Bev Boss. You know Bev Boss? Yes, write her name down, B-E-V-B-O-S, and look up her stuff. She's no longer with us, but she was a champion, and I mean with a capital C, champion for keeping play in early learning. She was amazing. And something just resonated so deeply with me with what she was saying, because it was true. Kids will get what they need from playing. All right, another reason for maybe the decline in play is just well-meaning parents. Kids are overscheduled, would you agree?
True.
Yes, they have clubs, they have little tiny kids have dance classes, and like 2-year-olds. They have all these after-school activities, right? So in school, play is being taken out, and now outside of school, play is being taken out, and these poor kids are not doing the thing that we are created to do, and we're going to dig deeper about that. But human beings, like other animals, we are built to play in the early years for very good reasons. Okay, the result we are seeing is a decline in creativity, greater rise in depression and anxiety, more than any time in recorded history. And there's been some dark times, right? So I'm left to wonder, in our efforts to educate, why are we taking play out? It's worse in elementary school, I know. Like, they don't even have recess anymore. They do, it's 2 15-minute recess. You cannot go deep in play in 15 minutes, right? And if you get in trouble, what gets taken away? And we know that. Like, for us, that's a no-brainer, but people are literally doing this in elementary schools, like, for sure. 100% it's happening. And our strive to get ahead and push academics down, No Child Left Behind, Race to the Top, Every Student Succeeds Act. The American Academy of Pediatrics has come out with a stronger position statement for play. Stronger. They had one, had to be stronger. To tell families they're prescribing play like medicine. Unbelievable. Play is so important that at the Convention for the Rights of the Child, the United Nations identified play as a legitimate right of childhood. And it needs to be protected. The United Nations. Can you guess who the only nation who has not ratified this position statement is? It's us. When I first started doing this presentation, I used to be able to say there's two nations. It was Somalia and us. It's just us. All the recent presidents have said, oh yeah, we're gonna do that. And have not. I think this is a concern, right? Okay. So now, for some good news. Are you ready for it? Phew. Okay. There is something that can turn all this around and have an impact on kids' lives right away. Do you know what it is? It's you. And it's me. And it's the parents, the guardians, the caregivers of the kids that we serve. Right? We can turn this around.